alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to David the Online Madrasa. I am ANM Abdul Hai Nasser, lecturer in English, Dhamti Islamia Kamil Madrasa. My dear learners, how are you? I think you are fine by the grace of Almighty Allah. You are staying home with your parents, with your nearest and dearest ones, and I hope Allah will save you and me from this pandemic situation. This is a worldly pandemic situation. In this situation, we have no scope to conduct our classes face to face. That is why today I have come here to conduct a class to gear up your personal routine, because I hope you are continuing your study in your residence, but if I take this class, then it will be helpful for you for continuing your study. So today I'll discuss or I'll talk about transformation of sentence, and you know that this is a vital element of your question. After narration, this question is most important, because if you know transformation of sentence clearly, then you will be able to complete the completeness of sentence also. That means completing sentence. So you must know or you must learn these topics properly. So today I'll discuss only three structures: transformation of sentence, and in this transformation of sentence there are three structures today I will discuss. The number one structure is in complex sentence. If there is though and although, how will you make it simple and how will you make it compound? And if you find so that in complex sentence, so how to make it simple and how to make it compound? And if you find so that together, that means here so draw that, so blank that. After so there will have a word, but here so that will stay together. And if so that stay together, then you have to use to for making simple sentence and for making compound sentence. I am going to discuss properly now. So if you should take out your notebook and you will write down the structures, because the structure will be helpful in later situation when you continue your study. In this sentence, complex sentence, though he works hard, he earns less. Though he works hard, he earns less. That means if you find though in complex sentence, then if you are told to make it simple, you have to use in spite of. Instead of though, you will use in spite of. And after that, if the subjects are the same, that means in principal clause and in subordinate clause, if the subjects are the same categories or same, then you have to reject the subject. And after rejecting the subject, you will use or you will add ing with verb. So in spite of working hard. And dear learners, you must know that in simple and complex sentence and compound sentence, there are more than one clauses. In complex sentence, there are more than one clauses. In complex and simple sentence, there will be a simple or a single clause. And in compound sentence also, there will be more than one clauses. And here there are two clauses. Though he works hard, he earns less. Though he works hard, this is dependent clause. So it will depend on the principal clause. That is why principal clause is not necessary to change it. You will change only the subordinate clause or independent clause, because this clause depends on the principal clause. So dependent clause you will change. In spite of working hard, he earns less. He works hard, but
but he earns less. That means in our structure, this is the most important. In complex sentence, if there is though, you have to use in spite of. And if you would like to make it to make compound sentence, then you will use but. So this is the difference between this sentence. So if you memorize these three things only, that means in complex, though, although, in simple, despite or in spite of, that is despite or in spite of, that means you can use here despite or in spite of. Both are the same and both are the same meaning. There is no difference between these two words. And in compound sentence, you will use only but. Then your sentence will be okay. And here I have given a bracket here. You may have a question why I have given here bracket. The bracket is only for, you can reject it or you can write it, because here the subject and these subjects is the same. That is why if you reject it, it's okay, and if you write it, it's also okay. That is why I have given a bracket. I have put a bracket here. My dear learners, I hope you have taken your notebook for writing something, because I have given some examples in the board. So look at the board. Here I have written complex sentence. He is so poor that he cannot buy a car. And in previously I gave two structures for so blank that. The one structure was the subject was the same and another subject was the different. And here the subject is the same. He is so poor that he cannot buy a car. So here he is so poor that he cannot buy a car. This is complex sentence, and if you are told to make it simple sentence, you have to use to. Instead of so, you have to use to, and then the blank, that means here there will have a word. It may be adjective or it may be adverb, and after that, from that before verb, you will reject it, and after that you will use to, and then verb, then extension. Extension, that means whatever extend in the sentence, whatever exists in the sentence, you will use after verb. So this is the sentence, he is too poor to buy a car. So if you are told to make it simple sentence, he is so poor that he cannot buy a car, you will make it simple sentence this way, he is too poor to buy a car. And if you are told to make it complex compound sentence, then you have to use very. Instead of so, you will use very, and after that, instead of that, you will use and all other things will be the same as like as the complex sentence. And the another structures, that means if the subject is different, suppose look at the example number 2. Here the subject is not the same. Here the subject is the box and here I. That means both of the closest subject is not the same. That is why you have to follow this structure. That means instead of so, you will use to. It's okay. And after adjective or adverb, you will use for an object of the subject. That means after that, if there is a subject, and there must have a subject, and you have to use the object of the subject. So for I, you have to use me, and if there is a subject here, you have to use you. If the subject is he, then you have to use him, and if the subject is they, then you have to use them. This way you have to make it object, and after them to, then verb. So this is the structure, and you must follow this structure. Then I think if you find any sentences these categories, then you will be able to make it complex, compound, simple sentence from complex. And then compound sentence, and in complex sentence, compound sentence, you have to use very. Instead of so, you have to use very, and after them and. So there is no difference between this structure and this structure in compound sentence, but the difference is only in the simple sentences. So if you are told to make it simple sentence, then you will think if the subject is the same or not. And if the subject is the same, you will follow this structure. And if the subject is different, then you will use this structure. And in compound sentence, the only one structure is enough. That is, instead of so, you have to use very, and instead of that, you have to use and.
Dear learners,
here the structure number 3. At the beginning of my class, I gave you 3 structures, number 1 structure and number 2 structure, and this is the number 3 structure. And in this structure number 3, the structure was in complex sentence so that will be used together. And if you are told to make this type of sentences to transform into simple sentence or into compound sentence, which rules will you follow? And this is the matter here. If there is so that together, that means in previous structure so that was the different way, that means at the beginning so and then there is a adjective and adverb and after then that, but here so that will use together. And if so that is used together and you have to follow this structure, that means these rules, that means here you will use only 2. So if you find so that in complex sentence and if you are told to make it simple sentence, then you will use only 2 instead of so that. And if you are told to make it compound sentence, you will use only and. And here, after using 2, you will reject subject and modal verbs. And before principal verb, there will have a subject and a modal verb, and you will reject this subject and modal verb. And after that, you will use verb and extension in the sentence. Here I have written the sentence, he stays home so that he can save himself from COVID-19. And you know that COVID-19, this is the pandemic situation. And in this situation, if anybody stays home, this is the better place for him or for her. Because if anybody goes out of home, and if you also go out of home, you can be affected in various ways. That is why if you stay in your residence, that will be better for yourself, for your family, and for all others also. That is why I have given these examples. He stays home so that he can save himself from COVID-19. So if you are told to make this type of sentence into simple sentence or transform this type of sentence into simple sentence, you will use 2 instead of so that, and after then principal verb, and after then the next of the sentence, that means the extension of the sentence. And if you are told to make it compound sentence, then you will write down only and. Suppose he stays home to save himself from COVID-19. He stays home and he can save himself from COVID-19. Here so that, instead of so that, you will use only and. No need to change another words in the complex sentences for making it compound. Only use and instead of so that, then your sentence is okay. And I think these structures are not so tough and it is very easy. You will write down these things in your notebook. Then whenever you will sit to read to personally, then you will be able to understand clearly.
dear learners,
Now I am going to flashback the class because at the beginning of the class I gave you 3 structures, and here also I have come with these 3 structures for clearly understanding. Suppose the first structure was do or do in complex sentence, and the second structure was so draw that or so blank that in complex sentence, and the third structure was so that in complex sentence. That means so that is used together in complex sentence. And if you are told to make these sentences into simple, I have told that, and I have also given some examples also. Now I am flashing back. Simple sentence, if you are told to make it simple sentence, then you will use in spite of or despite instead of do or do. And you have to use to, draw to, that is to. After to, you will use adjective or adverb. The adjective or adverb is used after so. And this adjective or adverb is used here. That means instead of so, you have to use to. and instead of that you have to use to. And there is another structure also here, because if the subject is different then you have to follow this structure. Is you have to use to instead of so, and after then for object, that means the object that is used after that. So that subject's object will be used after for and then to and the extension of the sentence. And if there is so that together, then you have to use only to. No need to use another things. And if you are told to make it compound sentence, then you will use the clauses, the beginning clauses, that means though, although, with, though, although clause, and you have to reject though, although. And after that, instead of though, although, you will use but in the middle of the sentence. That means you will reject the comma, and after rejecting the comma, you will use but. And if you are told to make it compound here, then you have to use so that instead of so that very, and then instead of that you have to use and. And in structure number 3, if you are told to make it or transform it compound sentence, then you will use and instead of so that. And here I have given also some examples for you can imagine this is your homework. You will write these sentences in your residence, and you will try to make these sentences to transform into simple and compound. And here complex sentence, though I stay home, I continue my study. That means you are staying home, but you have to continue your study because you are a student. You must continue your study in your residence. So if you are told to make it this sentence into simple sentence, then what will you do? You will only use instead of, in spite of, or despite, and then after then staying and the extension. So you can make it simple easily. In spite of staying home, I continue my study. And if you are told to make it compound sentence, then you will reject though, and after then you will use only a but here. Rejecting comma, you will use but, then your sentence is okay. Suppose you can write down this way: I stay home, but I continue my study. And another example, okay, in complex sentence, then he is so weak that he cannot work. That means here instead of so you will use to, and after then you will use weak, and from that up to not. You will reject these things, and then after you will write down the another extension, whatever here. That means here you have to use verb. So he is so weak, he is too weak to work. And if you are told to make it compound sentence, then you will write down he is very weak and he cannot work. That means you will use only and instead of that. And the subject is the different. Suppose N19 must, that, he. The subject is the different. If the subject is different, then you have to follow this structure. That means here I have written a structure using or, and here there is also or. So this or structure you will follow here. That means N19 must is too costly for him to buy. And in complex sentence, he reads more so that he can be a good citizen. Here you will write down only in simple sentence to, and in compound sentence and. Then your sentence will be okay. I think you have clearly understood. And in these structures, if you follow, and you will write down, you will make these sentences simple and compound in your residence. I have just given an idea. Understand? So whenever you will write down these things, you will write down clearly. And if you have any question, then you can also contact with me, because I am a teacher of Dhamti Islamic Academy Madrasa, and I am also staying here. And that is why if you have any problem, you must phone me, and you can contact me in any other way. And if you face any problem, I think you will easily solve this. And at the end of the class, I am going to tell that you are staying in your residence, and in this situation you must not waste your time, because time
This is the most important thing. And if you waste your time, and in long run you have to suffer. And if you do not waste your time, in the long run you will benefit, or you will be benefited. That is why I'll tell you all that you must stay in your residence, and you must not waste your time, and you will properly use your time, and then you will be a good citizen of our country. Because in this pandemic situation, you are staying in your residence. We will pray to Allah that Allah will save us from this pandemic situation, and whenever we will come in the class for continuing our class face to face, then inshallah we'll solve our all problems. Okay, that's all for today. Allah Hafiz.